For months, all I could talk about was my sister's wedding. Hawaii, sun-drenched beaches, floral lace, turquoise waves. It all sounded like a dream. And not just for her. I was genuinely happy to celebrate her big day, to stand beside her, to witness that moment when our family would finally come together for something joyful. After so many years of tension and distance, I helped her pick the color palette for the bridesmaids' dresses, sent her Pinterest boards full of flower arrangements, and even helped Mom design the invitations. I wasn't the maid of honor, but I was there for every detail. Or so I thought. About 2 weeks before the wedding, I started getting this strange, uneasy feeling. Every time I asked about travel plans, Mom would change the subject. Dad said, "Don't worry, everything's handled." My sister just laughed and told me, "You're such a planner. You'll give yourself wrinkles before the wedding." Still, something didn't feel right. Finally, a week before they were supposed to leave, I called my mom and asked for the flight details. "Just send me your itinerary," I said. "I want to make sure I have the same flight so I can sit with you guys." There was a long pause. "Well," she started, voice suddenly thin. "About that, we thought you were going to book your own ticket." I blinked. "What?" "You said you'd look into prices yourself," she continued, too quickly. "We assumed you'd already done it." "I said I'd check prices," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But we agreed you'd book everything together so we'd all arrive at the same time." Silence. Then, my dad's voice in the background. "Flights are expensive now. Maybe it's better if she doesn't come. She can watch the live stream." That one sentence sliced straight through me. I felt the air leave my lungs. My sister, my own sister, didn't say a word. I could hear her nearby, laughing at something, not even bothering to defend me. After the call ended, I sat on my bed, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop. Every website I opened showed sky-high prices. I could still go, technically, but it would mean draining my savings, staying alone, and pretending I wasn't the family's forgotten extra. For days, I went back and forth with myself. Maybe they really did forget. Maybe it was an honest mistake. But when the wedding photos started flooding social media, the family group hug, the champagne toast, the perfect beach ceremony, the truth hit harder than any wave ever could. I wasn't forgotten. I was excluded. Every smiling photo looked like a knife. My sister beaming in her white dress, Mom's arm around her, Dad dancing barefoot in the sand. My name wasn't mentioned once. It was as if I didn't exist. The worst part, not one of them called. Not during the wedding, not after. No wish you were here, no apology, nothing. On the night they all returned, I received a text from my mother. It was beautiful. "We'll show you the photos when you visit next." That was it. I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. My chest felt hollow, not from anger, but from the realization that I had been quietly erased from a moment that should have included me. I didn't cry right away. The tears came later, in small waves. When I saw a photo of my sister tossing her bouquet, when I realized my seat at the ceremony had been filled by someone else, when I noticed my name missing from the thank you post she made online. That was the night I promised myself something. I wouldn't confront them. I wouldn't beg to be included. I would remember. I would build something out of this pain. Something so strong, so undeniable, that one day they'd have to look at me and realize exactly what they'd thrown away. They had forgotten me once. I would make sure they'd never forget me again. The week after the wedding felt like a blur. A quiet, heavy fog that clung to everything. My phone stayed silent. No one called to check how I was doing. No one apologized for leaving me behind. It was as if I had fallen off the edge of the family map. At first, I waited for some explanation. Maybe Mom would realize what she'd done. Maybe my sister would send a message. Something, anything, to soften the sting. But the days turned into weeks, and nothing came. So, I did something they'd never expect. I stopped reaching out. No calls, no texts, no holiday greetings. When birthdays came and went, I stayed quiet. I wanted to see how long it would take before they noticed my absence. Before anyone cared enough to ask where I'd gone. The answer was almost a year. At first, the silence was painful. Family dinners used to be loud and chaotic, but comforting. Now, my evenings were filled with the hum of my apartment's refrigerator and the ticking of the old clock on my wall. But soon, something strange happened. The quiet started to feel like peace. I threw myself into work. projects I used to dread suddenly became exciting challenges. My boss started noticing my effort, and I got promoted. I began running again, early in the mornings before the city woke up, when the streets were still silver with dawn. I even took a solo trip, not to Hawaii, but to the mountains. I hiked alone, watched the sun rise from a ridge, and realized I didn't need my family's approval to feel whole. Slowly, the ache dulled. The wound was still there, but it stopped defining me. Meanwhile, little cracks began to show in their perfect fat aid. Word reached me through mutual friends. Small things at first. My sister's dream marriage wasn't so dreamy. Her husband had lost his job. They were arguing constantly. My parents were fighting about money. Mom was drinking more. Dad, apparently, spent most nights in his garage just to get some peace. It wasn't that I wanted them to suffer, but I couldn't help feeling that life was simply evening the scales. They had left me out of their picture, perfect world, and now that world was starting to collapse under its own weight. Then, almost exactly 1 year after the wedding, my phone rang. The screen flashed, "Mum." For a long moment, I just stared at it. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let it ring out like all the calls I had once made that went unanswered. But curiosity, or maybe old affection, made me swipe to answer. "Hello." There was a pause. Then her voice, soft and hesitant. "Hi, sweetheart, it's been a while." "Les," I said evenly. "It has." She cleared her throat. "We're having a family get-together next weekend. Your dad thought it would be nice to have everyone together again. Your sister and her husband will be there too." "Everyone together," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'd love for you to come," she said. "We'll miss you." For a second, I almost believed her. But the memory of that wedding, of the empty silence that followed, rushed back like a tide. Still something inside me, not forgiveness exactly but curiosity, stirred. A year ago, I had been the forgotten one. Now, I was someone else entirely. Someone stronger, calmer, sharper. "All right," I said finally. "I'll be there." Mom sounded relieved. "Good. I'll send you the details. You'll see. It'll be just like old times." But as I hung up the phone, I smiled to myself. No, it wouldn't be like old times. Not even close. This time, I wouldn't arrive as the quiet daughter they could overlook. I would walk into that room with my head high and my heart armored with everything I'd learned. Because sometimes, silence isn't weakness. It's preparation. And after a year of silence, I was finally ready to speak. Not with anger, but with power. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than it used to. Every mile that passed carried me closer to the ghosts of who I had once been. The dutiful daughter, the peacemaker, the one who always tried too hard to belong. But this time, I wasn't that person anymore. When I parked in front of the house, I paused for a moment before stepping out. The place looked smaller somehow, like time had peeled away its shine. The white paint on the porch railings had chipped, and the flowers Mom always planted in spring were replaced by a few struggling pots of wilted marigolds. It wasn't just the house that had changed, it was everything. Mom opened the door before I could knock. For a moment, she just stared at me, maybe surprised by the woman standing in front of her. My hair was shorter now, styled with purpose. My clothes were crisp, professional, not the casual comfort they remembered. "Sweetheart," she breathed, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look wonderful." "Thank you," I said, stepping inside. "It's good to see you, Mom." The air inside was thick with the smell of roast chicken and something else. Tension. I could hear muffled voices in the living room. My father appeared next, carrying his familiar half-smile, the one that used to make me feel like a stranger in my own family. "Well, look who decided to join us," he said. It was meant as a joke, but the words landed heavy. "I was invited this time," I replied evenly. He chuckled awkwardly and turned back toward the dining table. When I entered the living room, my sister was there. Perched on the couch, phone in hand. She looked thinner, tired, like the glow she had worn in those wedding photos had dimmed. Her husband wasn't with her, though I noticed a half-empty glass of wine on the side table. "Hey," she said, smiling tightly. "You came." "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't miss a family gathering." We exchanged a brief hug, polite, distant. The kind shared by people who used to be close but no longer know how. Dinner was a performance. Everyone tried too hard to act normal, their laughter brittle, conversation forced. My mother asked about my job, my apartment, the weather, anything to fill the silence that lurked beneath the surface. I saw your promotion on Facebook, she said, glancing nervously at my sister. You're doing so well. I am, I said simply. Work's been good, life's been peaceful. That word, peaceful, hung in the air like smoke. Halfway through dinner, my sister's husband finally arrived, his cheeks flushed and his eyes slightly glassy. He kissed her on the forehead, muttered an apology, and sank into the seat beside her. The atmosphere shifted. Mom's jaw tightened. Dad avoided eye contact. I sipped my wine slowly, watching. The perfect image they had tried to paint was cracking right in front of me. So, I said lightly, how was Hawaii? I never got the full story. The table went silent. Mom cleared her throat. It was beautiful. I'm sure it was, I said. I actually just got back from there myself last month. 4 pairs of eyes snapped toward me. You went to Hawaii? My sister asked. I smiled. Yes, my friends and I spent a week there. Stayed on the same island, actually. It was everything I imagined it would be. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. For a moment, no one spoke. Then I raised my glass and said softly, to family. The kind that reminds us who we are, even when they forget us. My sister's hand trembled slightly as she set down her fork. My mother's eyes glistened, guilt flickering in them for the first time. I didn't need to say more. The truth was already hanging there between us. Unspoken, undeniable. After dinner, I excused myself early. My sister followed me to the door, hesitating. You look happy, she said, almost wistfully. I am, I replied, meeting her gaze, happier than I've ever been. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came. I smiled softly, stepping into the night air. As I walked to my car, I felt lighter. Not because I'd hurt them, but because I hadn't needed to. The truth had done that for me. The balance had shifted, and for the first time I realized revenge didn't always need fire or fury. Sometimes, it only needed grace. That night after the dinner, I didn't sleep much, not because I was upset, but because I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: calm satisfaction. There had been no shouting, no scenes, no accusations, just a quiet dinner and a single, deliberate toast that told the story my family had tried to bury. A few days later, Mom called again. She wanted to catch up. She said, but I could hear the tremor in her voice, the uneasy guilt that had finally taken root. For years, I had chased their approval, their love, their validation. Now they were the ones chasing me. I agreed to visit one more time. A smaller gathering this time, just tea and dessert. I told myself it was closure, not reconciliation. When I arrived, the air in the house felt different, quieter, almost somber. My father greeted me at the door with an awkward hug. Good to see you again, he murmured. I noticed how tired he looked, like the weight of unspoken regret had finally settled on his shoulders. Mom had baked my favorite pie. It was her unspoken apology. She smiled too brightly, trying to bridge a gap she had spent a year widening. My sister came late. Alone this time. She looked worn down, her ringless hand giving away what she hadn't yet said. Divorce? I asked gently, after Mom left the room to fetch tea. She nodded, eyes glassy. It didn't work out. He changed. I wanted to say people always change. But I didn't. I just listened. For the first time, she wasn't the golden daughter or the family's favorite. She was just human, flawed and hurting. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry, she whispered suddenly. About Hawaii. About everything. I knew they didn't book your ticket. I didn't stop them. I thought it was easier that way. Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt that old ache again, the one from the night I sat alone scrolling through their wedding photos. But instead of anger, I felt something different. Clarity. You know, I said softly. I used to think being left out meant I wasn't enough. But now I realize it meant I was too much, too real, too aware, too inconvenient to their perfect picture. She wiped her eyes and laughed weakly. You always did see through everything. I smiled faintly. I just stopped apologizing for it. A mom returned then, cheerful but fragile, carrying tea like a peace offering. It's nice having all my girls together again, she said, placing the tray down. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had taught me to always say yes, to always forgive quickly, to always make others comfortable even at my own expense. For the first time, I realized I didn't owe her that anymore. I'm glad we could do this, I said quietly. But I think this is the last time I'll come by for a while. Her smile faltered. Oh, why? Because I needed to say goodbye properly. To the version of us that pretended everything was fine. She looked at me, confused. You're angry. I'm not. I interrupted softly. I'm free. The room went silent. My sister looked down, Mom's eyes filled. Dad shifted uncomfortably. But I didn't feel guilty. I wasn't trying to wound them. I was just speaking a truth that had lived in me too long. I don't hate any of you. I continued. But I've built a life where I'm seen and loved for who I am, and that's something I'll never give up again. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my sister whispered, "You really have changed." I had to. I said, "You taught me how." When I stood to leave, Mom reached for my hand. "We'll miss you," she said. I smiled softly. "Then maybe next time, you'll remember to book my ticket." It wasn't cruel. It was closure. A line drawn gently but firmly between the past and the future. Outside, the evening air was cool and golden. I walked toward my car, the sound of the door closing behind me like the ending of a long, painful song. As I drove away, I thought about how revenge had once sounded like fire, loud and burning. But now I knew the sweetest revenge of all was peace. They had forgotten me once. Now, they would remember me. Not as the daughter they left behind, but as the woman who learned to walk away without looking back.